Everyone, remain calm.
Yeah, that's how it always starts. And later there's running and screaming.
Somebody talk to me! What is happening?
Welcome to Jurassic World.
You're listening to the Jurassic Park Podcast.
You want to consult here or in my bungalow? Hold on to your butts.
Well, we're back.
Hello and welcome to the 62nd episode of the Jurassic Park Podcast. I'm your host, Brad Jost, and we are here to discuss all things Jurassic Park. In this episode, we've got a little bit of news, a ton of listener emails and voicemails to catch up on, and a quick audio clip from a recent Bryce Dallas Howard interview. Now, before we start, we've got a quick update on our Mattel video project. So far, we've gotten a bunch of great videos for the project. I love how you guys are showcasing your awesome collections, asking Mattel for inspired work, and letting them know just how much it means to you. Now, if you haven't submitted anything yet, you still have 1 week to do so. We are ending the submission period on August 15th, so make sure to get yours in by then. Remember, all you need is a cell phone to film. We aren't looking for any kind of big productions, and you don't even need to be in the film yourself if you're not comfortable. All you gotta do is keep it clean and fun, and we'll make sure to get you in the video. But enough about that. Why don't we get things started off with a bit of Jurassic news from around the world?
18 minutes and your company catches up on 10 years of research.
Access rate program. Access new security.
These pictures were taken in hospital in Costa Rica 48 hours ago.
I don't want to jump to any conclusions, but look.
Boy, I hate being right all the time. But today, I guarantee it.
If you were looking forward to seeing Colin Trevorrow return to cinema with his new film, The Book of Henry, you're gonna have to wait a little bit longer. Colin's directorial follow-up to Jurassic World was expected to hit theaters in limited release on September 16th, but it's now being pushed back to June 16th, 2017. The studio's hope is that the summer crowds will bring out more people, and especially those looking for an alternative to the typical summer popcorn flick. Now, apparently the film has been testing really well, and many are expecting it to gain award attention. Hopefully the studio Focus Features bet pays off here, and the film garners more attention next summer. You'll find a link to Variety's article in our show notes. So it looks like we are finally getting the last of the hybrid line from Hasbro. JP Carnotaur on Twitter came across the final batch, which includes the previously unreleased Terraminus and the others like the Spinosaurus, Dilophosaurus, Carnoraptor, Dilophosaurus Rex, Stegoceratops, and the armored Ankylosaurus and Indominus Rex. Furthermore, it looks like Entertainment Earth actually has the Indominus Rex hybrid available for pre-order with the intentions of an August ship date. Now, no actual date is present on their website, but let's hope it's actually August. That would be really awesome. Personally, I'll probably go for the Dilophosaurus with the coloring that's somewhat akin to the one from the original film, and then I'll probably get the hybrid Indominus, which is the crazy one with the reddish-orange coloring and the spikes on its back. Maybe even that Spinosaurus. I'm not too sure on that one yet. But I am pretty excited for that final pressing, and I do expect it to sell pretty well as long as the stores hold enough stock, which is probably pretty doubtful. To see more pics, head to the link in our show notes for JP Carnotaur's Twitter and also Entertainment Earth's Jurassic items. Jurassic Park in Concert has announced a few more dates, specifically those for German fans. On November 29th and 30th, you'll find the showings in Munich, Germany, December 1st in Nuremberg, Germany, and December 5th in Stuttgart, Germany. Hopefully those showings are somewhat close to our German listeners, and dates keep popping up for the concert experience, so head to the link in our show notes to see more and to get your tickets.
Oh, there it is. There it is.
Make sure to visit JurassicParkPodcast.com to find all our past episodes, brand new news articles, information on how to contact us, and much more. It's a great source for everything related to the podcast, and of course, Jurassic Park and Jurassic World. Head to JurassicParkPodcast.com and help us build a great community.
Anybody hear that?
I'm not a computer nerd. I prefer to be called a hacker.
Aren't you supposed to be a genius or something?
I can't get Jurassic Park back online without Dennis Nedry.
Incorporating all the latest technologies.
We shouldn't be here. And there's 5 dinosaurs.
How many Sarahs do you think are on this island?
Over the past few weeks, we've collected a lot of emails and voicemails, so let's get right into them. This first one is an email from Kat via our website. Let's check it out. Absolutely loved your episode 59 about JP the theme park. Thank you for focusing on theme parks in depth. Really appreciated every bit of it. Hey, something that has always bothered me about the original film when I saw it in theaters was when Hammond says, when Disneyland opened in 1956. We all know Disneyland opened in 1955. Why the mistake? At the time, my group absolutely did not think it was purposefully put in there to show that Hammond was out of touch, but that the screenwriters had made a mistake that no one had caught, which shocked all of us. How could all the proofers miss something so important? Well, so important to those of us who are Disney aficionados at the time. Maybe nobody else really cared, but it still bothers me to this day. Hey Kat, thanks so much for the love on episode 59. Chris and I certainly love putting together those episodes, and there's plenty more theme park episodes coming down the pipeline. As for that Hammond quote, I have no real great answer here. From my research, I couldn't find a logical explanation as to why it was done. I actually have considered a few things here, and 2 of them specifically. Number 1, I assume it was Hammond being out of touch, like you had said. Throughout the film, Hammond is not really in touch with many of the things throughout the movie. He's definitely not a good judge of character like he says he is. He chooses Nedry first off. He thinks next time it will be flawless, which, he says while people are dying throughout the park. And I guess he just made a mistake about the opening date of Disneyland. It happens. Maybe it was a mistake, but maybe it wasn't. I don't know. Maybe it was actually a mistake in the script writing. Who knows? Secondly, I think I chalk it up to maybe a bit of a jab by Universal. Universal, of course, had 2 theme parks open by the time the film was created, so maybe it was just a comment to poke fun at their competition. I don't know. But they knew it was something that would bug us Disney fans to no end. If anybody else out there has a theory or an answer, reach out to us and let us know, because that's all I got. Thanks again, Kat. This one here is an MP3 sent in via email from Jeff. Let's check it out.
Hi, this is Jeff DePaula here from the Disney Coast to Coast podcast, which you can find at DisneyCoastToCoast.com. And I've recently found your podcast, and I really enjoyed it very much. The Jurassic Park Podcast, quite fun. And of course, I'm a huge Disney fan, considering I have a Disney podcast. But there's several other things I love just as much as Disney, and one of them is Jurassic Park. And since I can't talk about it on my show, I thought I would send this in to you, because I had some thoughts on a recent episode of yours. So hopefully I can get my Jurassic Park obsession out of my system this way, since I can't talk about it on my show. But in any case, what I'm referring to is from episode 59, so this is a few weeks back. And I was listening, and this was the episode that was all about bringing the, whether or not Jurassic Park, the theme park, could exist in real life. And of course, you guys made some great points. You and your guest made great points on the show, but there were a few times that I had thoughts of my own that I thought you might like to hear. So here we go. First off, the lab tour you were talking about. This is the scene where they're showing the film about how Jurassic Park is made with Mr. DNA and all that. And you had brought up the fact that, the plausibility of John Hammond being able to be present at each of these films is not very plausible. And you're right, it's not. This is of course, the part where John Hammond pricks his finger with the needle, and he's the real John Hammond is interacting with the John Hammond on the screen. And this always bothered me for a long time as well, and I came up with a couple of thoughts as to why this might not be as unplausible as we think. And here's my reasoning anyway. It helps me sleep better at night. Maybe it'll help you as well. But first of all, I'm thinking maybe it wouldn't be John Hammond there. Maybe it would be an audio animatronic figure of John Hammond, which honestly I don't think is that crazy of an idea. I feel like John Hammond has a big enough ego that he would create an animatronic version of himself for this attraction. So that's one option. The second one, which I actually think is more realistic, is that although this film attraction, which you compared to the Carousel of Progress at Walt Disney World, which just so happens to be one of my favorite Walt Disney World attractions, but in any case, I was thinking that yeah, this film was created for the theme park, but I feel like it's very realistic that perhaps sections of this film, including that opening portion with John Hammond interacting with himself, was actually just for the sake of that weekend pitch that he was giving to all of the characters in the film. So, it's not unheard of by any means that companies spend a lot of money putting together presentations to pitch to investors or experts in a certain industry. So that's kind of how I interpret it at this point. I feel like it was a sales pitch film made specifically for that purpose and tagged on to the beginning of the film that all of the park guests would see. So that's what makes sense to me. I'd be curious to hear what you think of that. Maybe you agree or disagree, but I think that that's more plausible than John Hammond attending each film, for sure. So that was one of the thoughts. Another thing that you had mentioned with your guest was John Hammond when he says that the voice you're hearing is Richard Kiley. Well, that moment, you guys were talking as if you had spoken and said that, you can't believe that John Hammond would be available to say that every time or anything like that, and then you were caught into a conversation, maybe he would, maybe he's crazy enough that he would do that. Well, I actually think it's interesting that you interpreted it that way, because I never ever thought of it that way. I never thought that was part of the normal tour. To me, the way that I always saw it, and the way that what I think they were going for, is actually the fact that this was just like an emergency intercom system, like we're used to with any ride that exists out there. There's always the onboard sound system, so if the ride breaks down or stops for some reason, a cast member or employee will get on and let the rider or the guest know. That's all that was, in my opinion. And I think that John Hammond was just having a little fun. He knew the people in this tour, so he thought he'd just take a moment and kind of like point out a fun fact. So it's kind of like as if he was a tour guide of some sort. But this was like very specific for that moment and that purpose. I don't think by any means they were insisting that they would actually have somebody point these things out. In fact, that's what the Richard Kiley voice was for, right? That voice that they have giving all the facts, that's what would be part of every tour, and of course that's pre-recorded. So I definitely think that that's what they were going with there. Let's see, what else? There was a moment where your guest said people still would have seen it as a complete success because it was Walt Disney, and you were talking about opening day of Disneyland and all of the disasters that went on there, and that's what prompted him to say people still would have seen it as a complete success because it was Walt Disney. Just a little correction, that actually Disneyland was predicted to be a giant failure. The press especially they called it Walt's Folly, and Disneyland was supposed to be a failure if you really looked at the breakdown of it, and so I actually just don't think that that's a very fair statement that it was a success because of Walt Disney. A lot of things that he made at his time ended up not being huge successes, like Fantasia, for instance, and then years later, of course, it becomes a classic and eventually reaps its money back, but in the initial run, it didn't at all. Disneyland was not that case. It was a huge success early on, even with all of the problems that they had. But yeah, just wanted to point that out. And another comment that was made on your podcast was about the fact that when the power went out at Jurassic Park, the entire park shut down. And I think you said something like, if one thing goes wrong, the whole place is screwed. And you were talking about like how at Disneyland that was different because like if Pirates of the Caribbean shuts down, Haunted Mansion's still open. And you're correct, in most cases that is true. But I think like if you really look at the disaster that Jurassic Park had, where it essentially lost all power, if that were to happen at Disneyland, which I think is probably a hard thing to happen. I'm sure they have many backup systems and stuff. But let's just say if we're going to make a comparison to Jurassic Park where they lost all the power, if that happened at Disneyland, everything would shut down as well. So, Pirates wouldn't be open, but neither would Haunted Mansion if the entire park lost power like Jurassic Park did. So, in any case, those are just a few things I wanted to point out from your episode. I really, really enjoyed it, and I've been enjoying them for a couple months now. I found you probably about a month and a half, 2 months ago. So, keep up the great work. And I actually have a question for you, because this has always bothered me. and I'm curious your take on this. Where in Jurassic Park, John Hammond actually says, when Disneyland opened in 1956, and this always drove me crazy because Disneyland opened on July 17th, 1955. So my question is this: I've always wondered, do you think that this was a deliberate mistake, kind of showing like that John Hammond didn't know what he was talking about? Or do you think that this was a screenwriting mistake and that nobody caught it, which I kind of find hard to believe. I can't believe nobody who's read the script was like, oh no, it actually opened in 1955, but it seems to be a weird choice for a character flaw as well, so I'm not sure which direction I feel, but I am kind of curious to hear what you think about John Hammond mentioning Disneyland opening in 1956 versus the actual date in 1955. In any case, thanks for taking a listen to this, and hopefully you find it interesting or enjoyable, and keep up the great work. Thanks.
Awesome voicemail, Jeff. Thank you so much for taking the time to record that and send it over. I am a huge Disney fanatic, so I certainly don't mind talking about it and comparing it to certain aspects of the Jurassic series. We'll definitely have to talk about more of this off the air sometime. But in the meantime, let's go over a few things that you mentioned in your voicemail. For the tour, I totally agree. John certainly had an ego, and I think it wouldn't be surprising for him to throw an animatronic in there. Aside from his comment during the lab sequence when he says, "We have no animatronics here." Maybe he was just talking about that lab and not specifically elsewhere throughout the parks. But I think that they were trying to get across to the public that this park is real. Everything you can see, you can touch, and animatronics would kind of just confuse the guests. So I'm not really sure if that's the route they were going for. For your other point about that scene, I think many would agree with you that it was intended to be a sales pitch, and maybe wouldn't have actually presented to the park guests. But I'm not sold on that theory. Like I said before, I've heard so many people bring up this point before, so maybe there's actually some sort of credence to it. In my opinion, I think it says more about John just having to have his hands in every aspect of this park. But maybe in a different case, maybe they actually filmed different openings with other employees. That would be plausible too. And actually, I was just watching it back, and I wanted to point out something pretty funny. After he does his little cloning spiel at the beginning of the show, he sits down and he has a remote in his hand that closes the lap bars to begin the tour. I thought that was a really funny, interesting touch. It was very strange. You don't really see that kind of thing in theme parks. Moving on to that Richard Kiley bit, I think it's important to point out the way the film frames this scene. Now, first off, we are entering the gate, the big giant Jurassic Park gate. We hear a bit of information about the touchscreen and some other things, and then that iconic welcome to Jurassic Park, which we've already heard John say earlier in the film, but this time it comes from that Richard Kiley voice. Then it skips back to John in the command center saying, "The voice you are hearing is Richard Kiley. We've spared no expense." Then it skips back to the vehicles and you hear that Richard Kiley voice again. Now, from my perspective, the film, it looks like they're directly saying that John is speaking those words. Maybe he's not. Maybe I'm wrong. But I think it's being framed that way, as if he's the voice. He's that Richard Kiley voice, and there's maybe some sort of weird voice changer. It sounds absolutely crazy. It's not too implausible, though, because we do see that kind of stuff throughout parks today. But like I said in the episode earlier, it would be nuts for him to sit there and do this every time. But maybe you're right. Maybe it wasn't supposed to be Richard Kiley speaking in that segment that John spoke. Now follow me here for a second. Maybe it was supposed to be Kiley talking earlier, and then John interrupting, because, like I said, he has to have his hands in everything. So he lets Kiley speak, and then he speaks, and then Kiley comes back in to do the rest of the tour. I don't know. I think it's really up for interpretation, and I'd love to hear what others think about that moment. Now, let's turn back to Walt for a second. I'm going to actually stick by my guest statement and say that no matter what Walt did, it would have been a success. Now, it's a general statement, so let's take a look at a few things. While many in the industry, like you said, they dubbed it Walt's Folly, they also had no clue what he was trying to produce. A theme park was not something that was, prevalent back then. They were comparing it to something of a run-of-the-mill amusement park. Now, certainly people in the industry and those towns that he was looking to build it thought he was going to bring this weird, carny atmosphere to it, so they weren't exactly expecting what he actually brought to the table. Now, I think Walt's Folly was due to Walt pouring literally every cent he had into this project, whether it was his money or not, much like he did with Snow White. Back then, nearly 20 years earlier, people dubbed it Disney's Folly. Now, we all know how that film turned out. Pretty good. It was actually one of the most grossing movies of its time. Now, when it comes to the general public, people were clamoring for this park. People loved Walt, like I said, and basically everything he did, even though not everything he did was a financial success. Many of his films actually had poor showings, like you mentioned with Fantasia, but a lot of that was due to World War II, so that's not exactly a fair assessment of the times. But in another case, when millions of people are tuning in to preview the park on television and also watching things like Davy Crockett and then having over 28,000 people show up to opening day, I'd say it was kind of a predetermined success. Sorry, I really like Disney stuff too. Now, actually, going back to the Disneyland versus Jurassic stuff, as for the power going down, and yes, it's true, the power did just actually go out in Disneyland shortly after Chris and I had our conversation in episode 59, and right after I received your email, so it's super crazy timing, but luckily Disney has a great power grid and backup generators because their power really only went out for a few seconds and didn't really affect too much. Now, in our episode, I was mostly referring to typical downtime of a ride, not power outages. I think that's something that Hammond and their team didn't really plan well for because one bug just took down the entire park, everything. All the fences, all the doors, all the locks, everything. That really shouldn't happen. Now, your last question was funnily brought up in another email, which you just heard, so it's great to hear that so many of our listeners are on the same page and notice these little things throughout the film. Now, hopefully I answered it well enough in that previous email. Like I said, I just chalk it up to John being completely inept, as he was with most of the theme park aspects in the movie. Anyway, thanks again for calling out all those different points, and I definitely appreciate when listeners and Jurassic fans bring a different take. Most of the time we tend to look at things from our own individual perspectives and never take in those alternative views that others view it from. Thank you so much for that alternative take, Jeff, and hope to hear from you again soon. The next one is actually another voicemail. This one is from Sickle Claw. Let's take a listen.
Hey, hello, this is Sickle Claw from Twitter. As I recall, you mentioned about the new Mattel toys that were recently discovered by a guy on Twitter. Well, I'm just calling to say I thought they were pretty bad, actually. And if this signals the end of Hasbro's making a Jurassic Park toys, then they're moving up the license was probably for the best. I can only hope that Mattel will do better. If you've seen the video by Matthew Brando that's making the rounds, I think he advertised it on your channel. That has a good idea, and then maybe we'll help Mattel figure out what direction to go in the Jurassic Park toy line. Anyway, I hope the Mattel line is better. And thank you for listening. Bye.
Thanks a ton, dude, for calling in, and I totally agree with you. I wasn't too impressed with that final release of hybrids from the Hasbro line there. The thing is, I'm not necessarily a fan of crazy coloring of dinosaurs, so I was never a fan of lines like the Chaos Effect one. This line, it doesn't really do it for me. I know all the hybrids are the rage right now with the toys and the games, but I really hope Mattel pulls the focus back to more realistic depictions. Now, you mentioned Matt Brando, and he certainly had some amazing ideas for the new toy line. I really enjoyed his video. So, of course, like everybody else, I'm really hoping they follow along the lines with what all of us fans are looking for, because I think that's the key to selling more product. I'm sure they've seen all the outrage and will do the best they can to fix any prior issues. But thanks again for the call, man, and I hope to hear from you again soon. Next up, we have a voicemail from regular caller Justice Steele. Let's check it out.
Going, man. This is Justice Steele. I know it's been a while, but I just found out today about the fact of Hasbro losing the rights to the Jurassic World, Jurassic Park toy line, and it's now been given to Mattel. I know I'm kind of late to the party, but I guess it's better to be late than never. But when I heard that, I had a question come to my mind I just had to ask. So my question is, do you think that Mattel, along with making Jurassic World 2 figurines, do you think that Mattel will do a re-release of the original Jurassic Park, Lost World Jurassic Park, and maybe even Jurassic Park 3 figure line? I know some people have speculated about it. They think it'd be a good idea, but do you think that Mattel will, along with Jurassic World 2 figurines, do a re-release of the Jurassic Park, Lost World, and Jurassic Park 3 figures and bring it back to the kids today and show them how great those toys were? Because I still remember to this day when I got my first Jurassic Park T-Rex, and I absolutely loved that thing. I kind of wish I would have not gotten rid of it when I was younger, but I did, and I kind of hate myself for it now. But nothing I can do. I'll probably end up getting one soon. But that was my question. Do you think that Mattel will do a re-release of the original Jurassic Park, Lost World, and JP3 figurines? All right, thank you, man. Have a good day. Bye.
I just got to call out Justice Steele here for a second. He's always consistently calling in, so thank you very much, dude. I really appreciate it. As for your question, will they release prior lines? You know, I'm not too sure, but they'd be certainly stupid not to. So many of us fans are looking for a re-release of prior characters and dinosaurs, so I'm sure they are at least looking into it. Now, if they did, it would certainly be different than what we've seen before, and certainly wouldn't be the same sculpts. And I think I'd be okay with that, though. If they updated these figures, made them look a little bit more realistic to their film counterparts, I would absolutely love that. But for now, we'll just have to wait and see. But you know what? I'd be positive that they'd sell like crazy. Maybe even more than what Jurassic World toys would do. I bet you if we polled everybody, they'd probably say the same thing. Thanks again for the call, man, and we'll talk to you again soon. Here we have a call from Wyatt. Let's take a listen.
Hey, this is Wyatt. I've been contacting you guys on Twitter about having a shout-out on your guys' podcast. I would really enjoy a shout-out. I'm struggling on my channel. You guys have been through me for a while now, and I would really just enjoy a shout-out. And if you guys have any merchandise, please send them near. I'll give you guys a great shout-out on my channel, and also do a review of the products you guys send me. It doesn't have to be a Kiefer product. And, yeah, thank you guys for that. If you do give me a shout-out on your Jurassic Park podcast, my channel is Wyatt Labrum. I am Wyatt Labrum. It's just Wyatt Labrum all together. And, yeah, thank you guys. And, yeah.
Dude, of course I'll give you a shout out. You've been a listener for so long now, and I'm really glad to let others know about your YouTube channel. Everybody listening, make sure you go check out Wyatt's stuff. All you gotta do is search for Wyatt Labrum on YouTube, and you'll find it. Thanks again for the call, dude. Here's a submission via our website from Silvio.
Hello, dear friends. What is your position about hybrids? I'm a fan of JP since 1993, and I really hate this idea. Indominus Rex, okay. But I'm afraid. What do you guys think about creating the hashtag no hybrids? I'm afraid of unreal dinos in Jurassic World too. Dino monsters, theropods with wings, and all this madness. Let's make this.
Great message, Silvio. You know, I agree with you to a certain extent. I really don't want to see them go overboard, like you mentioned, but you know what? I'm okay with hybrids as a concept for the films. So let's go back to the beginning for a second. Now, these things have always been about hybrids. Now, yes, they have been simple hybrids, you know, by combining them with things like frogs, effectively creating the drama from the first film. But even back further, back to the original book, Dr. Wu talked about creating different versions of dinosaurs. And the book even had a chameleon raptor. Now, really from the start, these things have been monsters. And it really hasn't changed. You know, back from the first film, they've been monsters. So I'm perfectly fine with the concept of hybrids. But like you, I will say that I'm afraid of how far it may go. But I do have faith in the crew that is making the film. Most of the hybrid stuff that we're seeing currently is in the toy lines, and it directly ties into the mobile game. And the game is a much different beast than what we have in the films. You know, I think we'll be fine. I'm gonna love probably whatever they put on the screen for the next film. Hopefully that helps calm your nerves a bit, Silvio, but thanks again for sending in your thoughts. Here's another one from our website, and it's from Paul.
I, for one, am glad to see Hasbro getting the boot. Their Jurassic World offerings were awful, cheaply made garbage. If it wasn't for Hasbro name tag, I would have thought these were cheap Chinese knockoffs. NECA or even SH Monster Arts would make a better product I'd be willing to spend money on. I'm not even too sure about Mattel, as their quality seems bad, if not worse than Hasbro's. It's sad when the best JP-related toys were the die-cast and RC cars released by Jada Toys.
Hey Paul, I feel for you. You know, I know how you feel, man. The past line was actually not even the past line. The past 16 plus years have been a bit frustrating in the toy department. But really, I think most of our frustration stems from how spoiled we were during Kenner's run. You know, it was pretty great, so anything else seems to be subpar. I would say, though, that Mattel has some pretty cool stuff out there on the market right now. You know, they've got good packaging, and I'm certainly interested to see what they do along those lines. For now, I'm going to give them the benefit of the doubt, And especially since we were talking about the Jurassic Park franchise. You know, this series is one of the biggest franchises of all time, so I had to think that Mattel would treat it that way. I, for one, am certainly excited for what's to come, but I definitely hope we still get high-quality die-cast stuff and expand those lines as well. Anyway, thanks again, Paul, for the message, and hope to hear from you again soon. Well, that's a wrap for our listener segment this week. Thank you so much to everybody who sent in voicemails or emails. I really appreciate it, and I love taking the time to kind of go through them each and every week. If you have something you want to send in, like an MP3 like Jeff did, you can send it to JurassicParkPod@gmail.com. If you want to interact with us directly via our website, you can head there and fill out our website contact form. If you actually want to just give us a call, you can call our voicemail line and leave us a message. That number is 732-825-7763.
Oh, here, fire! Do not fire!
God creates man. Man destroys God. Man creates dinosaurs. Boy, I hate being right all the time.
We're gonna have to jump! We can! Are you ready? 1, 2, come on!
In the audio segment this week, we actually have a quick clip from Bryce Dallas Howard where she chatted with a radio show about her upcoming film Pete's Dragon. But of course, they had to ask her a few questions about Jurassic World. Take a listen.
I wanted to know, how did you do all the things in Jurassic World in your heels?
Yeah. Well, when you shoot it, it's not like a play.
Right.
So it's not, it's not, it doesn't happen all at once.
Right.
You can cut. Yes. And give yourself a little foot massage.
Okay.
And put Band-Aids on for blisters and start again. I mean, it was just, weirdly enough, it was easier than I thought. You just run on your tippy toes,
Right.
that's when you're sprinting, that's kind of what you're supposed to do anyway.
And I heard that they're doing a sequel.
Yes.
Do you have a name for it? Can we get the name?
I don't think there is a name, but I don't think I can say what the name is.
Darn it!
Yes.
I'm always trying to get the scoop for you guys listening.
I know. I'm sorry. I'm sorry.
Are you going to be in heels again? You're going to be running around in heels again?
Nope.
Nope. Okay.
Nope.
Not going to happen.
Nope.
This time she'll be in Uggs. No, just joking.
Well, it's like my character in this movie in Pete's Dragon. She's a forest ranger,
Right.
and she's dressed appropriately
Perfect.
for the forest because she was prepared to go in the forest, as opposed to Claire, who was a C-level executive and had corporate attire.
Right.
Okay.
Gotcha.
So Grace in Pete's Dragon is prepared.
She's prepared.
I
She's
gotcha.
wearing boots.
All
She's
right.
very sensible.
All right. Well, Bryce Dallas Howard, Pete's Dragon out next weekend.
Yes,
Correct?
August 12th.
We are super excited.
Come on, Bryce, stop. Stop taunting us. We really want to hear what that film title is. It's out there somewhere. Hopefully we get to hear what it is soon. And you can definitely hear her frustration in that stupid heel controversy. Come on. Can we ask her something else? Unfortunately, I have a feeling that's going to follow her around for a long time. But if you want to check out the video, I'll leave a link in our show notes to the video on BDH Network's YouTube.
Brought to you by Mattel Toy Makers. You can tell they're Mattel. They're swell.
We've recently partnered up with friend of the podcast, Aaron Beyer, to create a great opportunity to let Mattel know how much the Jurassic toy line means to us. We are putting together a video, complete with members of the Jurassic community, to show our love for the past toy lines. All you need to do is film a 20-second video with your phone, congratulate Mattel on obtaining the Jurassic license, and let them know how much this Jurassic toy line means to you. Keep it clean, and remember, do not bash any prior toy manufacturers. We have a few rules on our website, so find the post on JurassicParkPodcast.com for more information. We'll be accepting video submissions until August 15th. We'd love to see you join in.
You can tell it's Mattel. It's swell.
Thanks for listening to the 60-second episode of the Jurassic Park Podcast. Of course, I want to thank all the listeners who sent in emails, MP3s, or voicemails this week. Kat, Jeff, Sickleclaw, Justice Steele, Wyatt, Silvio, and Paul. You're all super awesome, and I'm lucky to have you as listeners. Don't forget to submit a video for our Mattel project. It's going to be great to give them a congrats and let them know how much these toys mean to us. I really can't wait to see what you guys send in. If you want to interact with us, we do most of our work over on Twitter, at Jurassic Park Pod. We're also on Facebook at facebook.com/Jurassic Park Podcast, and our Instagram handle is at Jurassic Park Podcast. You can listen to us via iTunes, Google Play, SoundCloud, Podomatic, YouTube, or our website, and especially wherever else podcasts are found. So make sure to subscribe to automatically get new episodes every week. If you haven't already, please give us a 5-star review on iTunes or a great review wherever you listen to the podcast. It will seriously help our rankings and make it easier for fans like you to find us. We're usually spotted commenting on the Jurassic Park subreddit as Jurassic Park Podcast. Don't forget to check out JurassicParkPodcast.com for all the links you heard here today. If you want to get a hold of us, you can email us with any news stories, MP3s, segment ideas, top 5s, or comments to JurassicParkPod@gmail.com. Or you can submit them directly to our website contact form. If you'd like to record something for the show, send it in to us and we'll feature it in an upcoming episode. If you don't have any way to record, you can give our voicemail line a call and leave us a message. That number is 732-825-7763. Thanks for listening and enjoy.
"5 minutes. Drop what you're doing and leave now."